So this is the 23:55 hours GMT on Thursday, the 20th of October 2022 edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo framework and the editions. This one is, of course, going to take a look at the resignation by Liz Truss. We called her Liz Truss very early on, and the resignation not long before that of Cruella Braverman, and the surfacing of the evil personification of evil, the depraved Boris Johnson threatening to stand as a candidate for the Conservative Party and for the post of Prime Minister of the United Kingdom again. So we should be talking about all of these as far as the time and the technology permit. What is happening here with the resignation of what they're calling 44 days? I mean, least trusted is what we also described her as, least trusted. Now remember, when she was, during the last 4 weeks of the months-long kind of so-called contest for the post of the leader of the Conservative Party, which, because of the absence of a constitution in this corrupt country, automatically means that she became the prime minister of the country. So she was prime minister for 44 days, and she shouldn't have been prime minister for even 4 days. And the same applies to Cruella Suella Braverman, because the two of them are featured on the front page of the Daily Mail of Thursday, the 20th of October 2022. We can't display that in this program because of the technology, but we shall be describing this. What they are saying in the Daily Mail is that actually, that confrontation that lasted between the shouting match lasted between Truss and Cruella Suella for 90 minutes. It is their statement. And it ended with the Truss sacking the Cruella Suella. And that is the actual sequence. That is what they're saying. Now, this will not be kind of the official, permanent, kind of final version of what happened, the sequence of things. But the fact that Cruella Suella and least trusted Liz Truss were at odds over the so-called issue of migration. The issue of migration concerns, in the case of Cruella Suella, the latest topical issue is the migration numbers coming from India, Narendra Modi's India. And Cruella Suella was adamant that the numbers of Indians coming to the UK under student visas, etc., should be drastically curtailed. There has been also news about the fact that the student visa is abused, and Indian students using student visa or abusing the student visa arrive in the UK with a number of family members and dependents, etc., etc. So that is what Braverman was actually concerned about. But Braverman may have been concerned about that to appease the right of the Conservative Party, the racist the far racist, far right racists of the Conservative Party. But she herself, as we said about her before, she herself is an anti Asian, anti African, anti black people. She is of Goan origin, and she is not white at all. Very much, she is very much a black skinned Asian person. She is not a fair skinned Asian person herself. So if you look at her, she's not even on a kind of skin color that the Gujarati origin African woman, Priti Patel, the ugly Patel, whom she succeeded, sequentially succeeded, was look like. So these are people that are dysfunctional in terms of personal kind of constitution, if you like, and ethically, morally, they haven't got any morality or ethics. So we shall talk more about the contest that is coming. But the amazing thing is that the evil personification of evil, Boris Johnson, even has the audacity to float the word. It's not his allies, it is him. It's Johnson that is actually getting the Fleet Street morons to promote him once again. They're forgetting that it was only months since, or it is only months since Boris Johnson himself was ousted. And the reason he was ousted was because he lied. He committed wrongs, and there are several investigations currently underway against him. So how can they even think he should be allowed to contest as leader of the Conservative Party? I mean, it is being suggested that he's a vote winner. This guy from the Times newspaper, who I have not seen before, this guy who has been described as the political editor of the Times newspaper, who appeared along with Rachel Shabi in the press preview edition of Friday, the 21st of October 2022, broadcast from the Downing Street location and fronted by Gillian Joseph. Now, Gillian Joseph is an African origin woman. She is from the Caribbean background, I think. And at the beginning of this century, she worked as a news presenter on the what is used to be called the Newsroom Southeast. Now, Newsroom Southeast also had this criminal, Emily Maitlies, who overhyped herself at Newsnight before she kind of found more lucrative location, which is where she is now, with I think John Sopel or similar individuals that used to be on the BBC. Now, Gillian Joseph appears to be brought up in England, but mentally she is a complete mental slave, and she has no independence mentally. But then that doesn't that's not an exceptional kind of mental position. Most of the presenters on a Sky News, including Anna Botting, is only marginally, slightly less mentally servile than Gillian Joseph, but only marginally. So the short kind of review or preview of the Fleet Street Papers of Friday that Rachel Shabi and this new character that I have seen, in my view, it is new, as the Times new political editor, they did that. Rachel Shabi, as always, was much better than her co-appearee. And Rachel Shabi got the facts right, and she was more objective, and she was intellectually more mature and more kind of reliable. And This guy from the Times then disintegrated into a supporter, kind of wishy-washy supporter of the line that Boris Johnson is peddling from behind the scenes. That is, Johnson will be one of the candidates. They will manage to get him as a candidate. Johnson is putting this about as a third party kind of sourced item, but it's actually him, first person. So let's hope that the Conservative Party is not completely extinct. Because if it is extinct, then they will have Johnson as the candidate. And once Johnson appears, whatever the guise, he will be the defining destroyer of the Conservative Party as a political party of any contention. So we shall come back to Liz Truss and the appearance in the previous 24 hours of Grant Shapps and Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor and Home Secretary. That actually was also interpreted fast in the media as being the kind of disappearance of Liz Truss's own followers and the takeover of Liz Truss's administration by Rishi Sunak supporters. Now, one of the papers, Friday papers, is actually reluctantly admitting that it's probably the Sun, but we shall check and see which one is the actual paper that is saying it. Okay, so we shall move from the camera shortly for a few kind of, I'm going to now we in the meantime, let's go back to the updated bits. There is one bit on the private eye of dated Friday, that is Friday the 21st of October to 3rd of November 2022, issue number 1584. And on page 22 of this issue of Private Eye, there is a piece under India Watch. And the India Watch piece is about, well, it's a long overdue piece, but it is a piece about the Muslims being violated and murdered, massacred, and raped by the Modi-fronted BJP regime, which has been in power since 2014. Now let's read this bit on Private Eye, which is probably not for the first time we're reading this. This is the piece, India Watch. And it says, on 7th of October, the United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC, voted not to debate the human rights situation in Xinjiang by 19 to 17 votes, with 11 abstentions, including India. China's supporters were those it can pressure. I mean, this article is written in sub-grammatical kind of style. Unless you actually think about it, it doesn't spontaneously make sense. China's supporters were those it can pressure. It's a sub-grammatical kind of sentence, half sentence. By it, private lie means China. So what I shall do with the rest of the piece, I shall edit the sentences and make it as understandable as I expect to understand a piece. But India has enough economic muscle to vote as it wishes. This is a very lazy written piece. The following day, now there are too many it's in there. The following day, it explained itself. What they mean by it, both it is the UN Human Rights Council. The following day, the UN Human Rights Council explained itself, saying human rights should be respected in Xinjiang, but country specific resolutions are unhelpful. Now, there, the private lie should have more text and actual reference, specific reference as to what the UN Human Rights Council resolution, the corrupt resolution, said. But it doesn't say that, but we find that in due course and put in an appropriate edition. In true motivation, that is the UN Human Rights Council's true motivation, may lie in its own approach to the 14% of Indians who are Muslim. Now, 14% of Indians may sound only 14 out of 100. This is psychologically very misleading. 14 out of 100 is a very small number as it appears there. But what is 14% of what? The Indian population, let's check the Indian population currently, at least in the current entry. Let's look at the Indian population currently now. So India, the current population of India as this entry on Wikipedia shows, there are 447 languages in India. Think about that. So it's a huge country in terms of area, in terms of the demography. Let's find the actual number of people in India now. It's a long entry. Demographically, this is the second biggest country in the world. So let's check otherwise. Because 14%, 14.2%. Hinduism is 79.8%, and the Islam is 14.2%, not 14% as the private lie say. And then there is Christianity 2.3%, Sikhs 1.7%, Buddhism 0.7%, and tribal religions like Samaism, Bon, Animism, Kirat, Munduim, Donil Polo, Jainism 0.4%, no religion 0.25%. So how many people are in India? So let's see how many people are in India. So we can work out 14.2%. That was 2011 census anyway. Which is outdated, so that needs to be corrected as well. Now, okay, so that's 1.38 billion people in 2020. So 1.14.2% of 1.38 billion equals what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just under 200 million people. Now, it's 195 million people. Let's just accept that for the time being, yeah? So the population of Western Europe So the Western Europe population is just 200, kind of 1, 2, 3, yes, 200 million more than the Muslim population in India. So it's the entire Western population, Western European population. That many people are being discriminated, treated as completely nothing. And we shall come to the meaning of nothing. Because this girl, 8-year-old girl, the 2018 rape, torture, and murder of an 8-year-old Kashmiri Muslim girl by 7 Hindu men resulted in the BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, ministers addressing a rally in support of the accused, not the accused. They're not accused, they're murderers, they're rapists. So the private law piece, obviously it's not written in India, it is written in London in private law's office, based on patchy, itsy bitsy kind of research, but that is not a research that is done properly. And then the phrases like openly permitting lawless punishment of a minority group by state agents sends a terrible signal, empowering nationalist groups and anyone with a grudge to join the persecution. Now, private law has not covered this piece. Obviously, probably it came in terms of printing because the private law main bulk of the paper is the printed long before the last days. The last days are the ones that it adds the latest events, the political events which let's say, which are featured on the main political page, the main text page or pages, which start on page 7 is the private lie. So it's treasury hunt and shelf staker, and the state of Liz Truss going, yeah. So the main events are printed, the main contents are printed during the week or the fortnight, throughout the week and or fortnight. I think, and the last one is left for the last day. So what do? They print it. I think they actually print it on Monday. And the printers then they get packed, etc., and they send them out on Tuesday. And the main news agents get the issue supposed to be out on the Friday, but the main news agents get it on the Wednesday before the Friday. So there are the gaps between the days the print order is actually finalized. Now, that is the bit. I'm not going to read the rest of this piece because it's a shoddy, sub-grammatical piece in the private lie about the Muslims. Now, on page 21, the previous page is the one that is Rotten Boroughs. Rotten Boroughs is the column that, or the page, there is three column page that is dedicated to the various wrongdoings, criminality and corruption that occur in various local councils, and which that private lie gets hold of or manages to find out. Most of the council wrongdoings and corruption and criminality have never been reported by private lie, and it is to do with the guy who does that Rotten Boroughs column, who is not he's not very well informed and is not knowledgeable enough. But we use this Rotten Boroughs as a reference, as a frame of reference, nothing more. The main information is coming from us. Now, this is a corrupt woman, one of the most crooked council employees, called Catherine Carswell. Now, Catherine Carswell, I mean, if she were a rapist, then she can be easily described as a rapist of many English local councils. She has robbed them and she has raped them and she has literally fucked them up. And now she is fucking up the Croydon Council now. Now, she became appointed there before the Croydon Council was converted into an elected mayor kind of thing. And Catherine Carswell is a part of a very small number of criminals that are kind of the exchange at will, if you like, the posts, highly paid posts that they hold at public expense in central government as well as in local government. She was the first one that Newham, London Council, Newham's corrupt mayor, the latest corrupt mayor, Rukhsar Fiaz, appointed in Newham. Now, I still have outstanding complaints against Catherine Carswell because of her lying and conspiracy and corruption while she was in post in Newham. And I have got outstanding complaints, and one of the senior employees in the so-called Democratic section in Newham Council, who I had the maximum communications with about Carswell and her lying, has left the council now. I'll be investigating why this particular one left the Newham Council. Also, not in post is the woman that Rukhsana Fiaz, the crook, appointed after Carswell became untenable, because Fiaz was under pressure to get rid of Carswell for various reasons, but not really democratic, accountability, ethical reasons. She was forced to get rid of Carswell and appointed apparently diversity exhibit, a black woman who too has left Newham Council. As at this date, I am not sure as to who the current incumbent in that post is, but whoever it is, I shall update in due course. Essentially, Carswell lied because I caught her doing a number of fiddly things while I was at the East Ham Town Hall, which is one of the two former council town halls, Newham town halls. One is East Ham, which used to be the East Ham Borough Council town hall, and the one in Stratford, which used to be West Ham Borough Council's town hall. Now, in the East Ham town hall, when I was standing at the reception, I think in June, I think in the 4th of June 2018, I was talking to the receptionist there, and I suddenly heard somebody speak to me from behind me. And it was words to the effect that thank you very much, or thank you for holding us to account. I turned around and I saw this figure, little figure of Ruxana Fiaz, thanking me for holding her to account. Now, what had I done to hold her to account? Because only a few minutes ago I had left the meeting that she was attending, addressing, and she saw me sitting on the gallery. But actually, what she was referring to was the role that I had played in her getting the Labour Party's nomination as the candidate for mayor election in May 2018, only the previous month. What had I done? Well, I had appeared live on a satellite channel against Robin Wales on the 14th of March 2018. And in that exchange, I had demolished Robin Wales, and the entire active contingent of the Labour Party in Newham became absolutely spontaneously overjoyed with my role, and they said their gratitude to a man called Shoaib who hosted the program that I attended against Robin Wales on the 14th of March 2018. It was Shoaib who said to me that Newham's Labour Party members were very, very, very grateful to Mr. Mohammed Haque, and would Mr. Shoaib convey their thanks to Mr. Mohammed Haque. So this is what happened. So what happened as a result of my demolition job on Robin Wales on that program, the members were definitively swayed to vote for Roxana Fiaz. 2 days later, the actual nomination was announced and decided, and it was decided that Roxana Fiaz would be the Labour Party's candidate for the post of elected mayor. So that's what she was, quote, thanking me for on the 4th of June 2018, as I stood at the reception at the Eastern Town Hall, and I was speaking to the female receptionist on a number of practical issues, including why the then clerk of the meeting that Roxana Fiaz had just addressed, and one I had observed, called Adrian May. Adrian May is now no longer in the council, but it was Adrian May that I have had the most communications with, containing the complaints against Catherine Caswell. Now, what was happening was just before Roxana Fiaz began thanking me, I noticed this woman about 20 yards from me, standing very close to the wall next to the door exit on that side. And she was, I think, taking pictures of me on her mobile. Now, she had no idea who I was unless somebody told her. Or she must have watched me. Or she must have watched the television program that Roxana Fiaz must have played again, that I had demolished Robin Wales on. She was taking my pictures. There is no doubt about it. I've been taking pictures long before Catherine Caswell even met a camera. So I know how to take pictures and what a photographer looks like or appears like when they are taking pictures, especially in a strategic location. What she also did on that occasion was, I think, to communicate to one of the corrupt colleagues of Roxana Fiaz's. It's a woman of African Caribbean background. That woman is one of the four corrupt gang that for 4 years or 6 years had been engaged in active conspiracy, a plot against Robin Wales in Newham. So what happened was Catherine Carswell knew who I was, and she communicated to this corrupt woman to come to where I was. And by that time, of course, Roxana Fiaz was congratulating me, etc., etc. And this woman, then suddenly, from my right, Roxana Fiaz was talking from a angle, standing to my left in front of me. And John Gray was standing, but he was not saying anything. Now, John Gray, Roxana Fiaz, this woman, and another one. These four were the plotters against Robin Wales for 4 to 6 years in Newham. Shall come to that another time. And so this woman comes on and she addresses me with maximum hostility and illegality. She says, "Excuse me," and she demands that I stop talking to Roxana Fiaz. Now, that is one of the other complaints that I have against this gang. Now, why are these gang hostile to me after the 14th of March demolition job that I did that's rescued them? That is to say, they managed to get the Labour Party's votes, highly influential role that I played in getting Roxana Fiaz the nomination. Does she realize that? So when Private Lie talks about Catherine Carswell in Croydon being the subject of complaints against her racist behavior against one of the directors, what's her name, Hazel Simmons. They have no idea just how shallow their piece about Catherine Carswell is. I know more about Catherine Carswell than Private Lie in all their coverages and reports about Catherine Carswell has said altogether over the last several years. Now, Carswell, obviously, like Isabella Freeman, who left Slough Council before she got hired by Tower Hamlets Council, the crooks, because Isabella Freeman was the subject of several complaints against her racistly attacking an Indian origin employee in Slough Council. So here, Catherine Carswell is getting £192,000, and that is only straight salary, not talking about anything else. It must be more than £192,000 she's fleecing Croydon of or Croydon people of. So she has issued a statement as if it was issued by the corporate Croydon Council. It says, Carswell has been exonerated of all complaints, including racial discrimination, by external, independent investigation reports. Now, the Simmons case had been used by Carswell to justify withholding publication of the 160-page Penn report. Now, who is Penn? Penn is the Richard Penn, described in the Private Lie piece as the local government association investigator. Now, Penn didn't exonerate her, and nor did the Labour Party, because as the English kind of language version of the Al Jazeera investigation has revealed, the Labour Party centrally, and it could be the Labour Party during Jeremy Corbyn's tenure as leader of the Labour Party, or it could be after him, of- after he left and Keir Starmer took over. Whoever was the leader, the Labour Party centrally lied about the complaints against the Croydon Labour Party, Croydon Council, and the corruption and criminality and all the other things. So Private Eye has not acknowledged the report about Al Jazeera, and it hasn't really reported on the disclosures made by the locally based Inside Croydon news outlet. It's a campaigning, kind of semi-campaigning news outlet. So what they've done is just a shallow piece about Carswell. We shall come back to Carswell more later. And then this piece is also another shallow piece about Havering. The Havering Council is a corrupt council, and what they're saying in terms of Tower Hamlets is that Tower Hamlets Council is one of the councils, including Thurrock, that houses people from Tower Hamlets in Havering. But that is something that has been going on for longer than Tower Hamlets Council crooks would disclose. Now, the fact that Newham Council's monitoring officer, who is Daniel Fanwick. Daniel Fanwick used to be employed by Havering Council. And Daniel Fanwick is the one who has actually combined both Newham Council and Havering Council and the legal so-called services, the legal denial service. It is to do with Daniel Fanwick. But there is no mention of Daniel Fanwick in this piece in Private Eye. And without that kind of connection being stated expressly, the reader cannot understand even the 10% of the facts that are actually involved in the pieces that Private Eye publishes under the grand kind of column of rotten boroughs. It is not as extensive, as kind of transparent as it should be or it could be. But that is the kind of editorial input and update that we exclusively bring into the issues. Now, Timeless Council Timeless Council has been, is, and has been so we'll come to Rupa Haque and her comments about Quadri Kharzang in the piece White Shower on page 16 of the Private Eye, the latest Private Eye, later. Now, the extent of corruption in the housing section in the Tower Hamlets Council, instead of investigating it, instead of exposing it, instead of demanding action, Channel 4, the crooks in Channel 4, now Channel 4 has got various corrupt operations. I don't think that Channel 4 operations are interconnected. That is to say, I don't think the fact check, let alone ethics check, let alone morality check, the various things that they publish from the same kind of channel. So they did a series of programs which is very much consistent with the far right, racist, and corrupt lobbies active in the country about housing. Let me just find the at least representative sample of the program that I referred to in the last edition. Let's check with the hopefully this is, let's say, let's see if we can find this criminal, because Starmer's Council, like Croydon Council, like Lambeth Council, like Newham Council, like Hackney, all these mainly London councils, but not exclusively London based, all the local councils are hubs, centers for criminals. They are called officers. These are criminals. They are called, wrongly called, officers. We shall come to demolish the officers tag shortly. Now this is undercover boss. So this is the one. Let's see if we can access the actual this criminal. It is shown as dated 23rd of July 2010, and it's obviously we can't show on this screen, but I'll read the relevant bits that I want to highlight. This criminal has been a career crook. The chief executive, he was chief executive in post in Tower Hamlets at a crucial kind of period when the corrupt mayor post lobby was ongoing. And this liar made up, when there were complaints about the bogus signatures that were added to the kind of so-called petition that was required for the calling of the referendum for the imposition of the crooked mayor post. This one denied, and he said that there was no corruption. Now, he had a vested interest because he was operating in complicity with Luther Rahman. So this says that it was broadcast on the 22nd of July. Now, in that broadcast, we haven't found the full video, but there is a kind of introduction to the video there. So let's see if we can find this. We'll come to the various things that are involved in that Channel 4 corruption. It's like Channel 4, on the outside, it pretends or has pretended as a radical kind of new kind of broadcaster. But it wasn't. It was completely corrupt already. Now, when I challenged Jeremy Isaacs, Channel 4's first chief executive, at the very first press conference that Isaacs organized to boast about the newly launched channel at their then headquarters in Charlotte Street, London W1, near the Tottenham Court Road. Isaacs, of course, neither had the courage or the information to challenge, kind of counter my challenge. I challenged him and he never answered and he could never answer. This is the pattern of my challenging crooks. When I challenged the criminal, Jeremy Isaacs, my challenge was based on the fact that the channel was not delivering what it had been funded and founded to deliver, which is the radical, really genuinely independent, documentary, factual television. I mean, I had a piece against the piece in New Society. Now it is kind of no longer in publication. The New Society Weekly published a piece about Channel 4. I mean, at the beginning, and I contested the piece. It was written by the crook Hogarth, the son of the Hogarth, Richard Hogarth's son, who has died. I mean, I think he died before his father. And that sick boy, Simon Slimy Hogarth, wrote a piece in New Society, a stupid, ignorant piece in New Society about Channel 4. And I had to contest that. So the crooks somehow scoured the whole area of Tower Hamlets, and they fucking found a mental slave surrogate boy whose name they used. And I shall be examining the use of surrogates by them and others. And I shall be doing things about the crook, the Indian crook, the Parsi, fire worshipping crook, Frick Dondi from India. Frick Dondi and his then wife, Mala Dondi, those two liars pretended to be operating with darkest dirty house, her dirty house on the so-called race today. And they pretended these criminals claimed to have been rescuing the Bangladeshis in East London in Tower Hamlets, suffering from housing shortage and homelessness. How the fuck these criminals had no way of knowing what was happening in Tower Hamlets? And yet they became instant experts. And the fucking Wikipedia on Mala Sen, her paternal, her birth name Mala Sen, is a Bengali origin, Mala Sen, got married in 1968 to the crook Frick Dondi. Now, Mala Sen and Frick Dondi committed fraud at the expense of the people's money at the Channel 4. And Frick Dondi, abusing his position as commissioning editor, he gave lots and lots of money to his wife or his former wife, Mala Dondi, Mala Sen, and she is now on the record on Wikipedia entry, created the first documentary about Fulon Devi. Fuck them. She lied, she stole lots of information from other people and she misled Fulon Devi. She lied to Fulon Devi, etc., etc. And the documentary that Mala Sen produced at the expense of Fulon Devi was wrong and irresponsible. And I have to yet find a definitive evidential ground to pass an opinion as to whether, to what extent, if any, Maladondi was responsible for getting Fulondebi murdered. This is a very serious question. I'm not saying she did do that, but I'm saying there is a number of questions about Fulondebi being compromised by Mala Shen or Maladundi before Fulondebi was murdered or assassinated. So we've got a lot of information that is not there, but Private Lie pretends to be publishing facts. Now, these facts are only superficial. Now, going back to the piece about Rupa Haque talking against or about crazy Kwartang. Let's see what they're saying about this piece. So this is about Tory MP Lee Anderson, who said another Labour MP has the whip removed for alleged racism. That is what he wrote about Rupa Haque. But this piece about Lee Anderson is about Lee Anderson's own racism and his connection with the far right groups, white pride, white lives matter, etc., etc. We shall come to that again before we finish this particular edition. Now, this is housing news on page 16. Now, housing news rarely talks about the actual housing benefit or the what is called local housing allowance, the form of housing benefit paid to private renters and supposedly linked to the cheapest 30% of rents in an area. After an increase in 2020, local housing allowance rates were frozen again in 2021 and 2022, leaving tenants with growing shortfalls and at risk of homelessness. Next up is the benefit cap, which sets the maximum that any household can receive in benefits. This was put at £500 a week in 2013, but cut to £442 in London and £383 elsewhere in 2016 and has not been increased since. Around 130,000 households are capped, losing an average of £52 a week and unable to pay their rent allowance, etc., etc. Now, why am I talking about all of this? Because the local housing allowance is a complete, absolute corruption. It doesn't come anywhere near covering the rent. 30% cheapest, 30% itself is an intentional poverty creating measure and criterion. The DWP is a den of crooks and liars and thieves and criminals. So, what I'm saying here is that when it comes to housing benefit, local housing allowance, and the related role of the DWP, which is the source of the main housing benefit payments, the maximum number of housing homelessness in this country, well, especially in England, are caused by the DWP and by their colluders based in the local councils as well as in the so-called social housing operations like the crooks, the criminal gangs in Tower Hamlets community housing and the Tower Hamlets based Poplar, Haque. And there is no accountability. There is no answer. There is no question, let alone answer. There is no question asked by MPs of any party about the role of these crooks and criminal gangs and triads, let's say. The woman Debbie Abrams, a Northern Labour Party MP, was during Jeremy Corbyn's time a shadow Secretary of State for DWP or the benefits kind of ministry. She was stupid. She never actually investigated even 5% of the corruption and criminality that the DWP is. The corruption and criminality that each of the council housing benefit section is. And as I have said at least 100 times, if not more, Jeremy Corbyn has got a very highly active propaganda fan club going. They keep saying that he would have been the best prime minister. This has been going on again this last 48 hours in the wake of Truss resigning. But as I have said, Jeremy Corbyn is dishonest and corrupt. I mean, they've been parading him as a, what have they been parading him as? They've been parading Corbyn as an almost a saint, as a socialist saint. But Corbyn has never been a saint, and more lethally, Corbyn has not had access to the actual facts. of what he's been talking about. So Corbyn has not talked about the DWP. Corbyn has not talked about the role played by the local council housing sections and bureaucracies in creating housing shortage, in creating homelessness, in creating displacement. And there is nobody in any of the parties, the other parties, smaller parties in parliament, that actually has the slightest clue as to how the council crooks collude with the criminals in the DWP in creating and perpetuating and perpetrating housing shortage and allowing billions of pounds worth of empty properties to stay empty right across the country. And there is no mention in any of the so-called manifesto statements about housing poverty, and Politonby will never get to understand any of this, as I have said before in an earlier edition about our visit to the Clerkenwell County Court. Clerkenwell and Shoreditch County Court. Well, was it 2011 or 2013? I shall check again what date Politonby published that piece about her day in the court. So she is posted that on the 2nd of February 2016. And her piece was headed "A Day in Court Showed Me the Misery of Britain's Housing Policy." Well, it didn't. Because Politonby completely retailed the liars. She praised sheltered the criminals and she praised the solicitors the criminals and she praised the judge, county court judge the criminal. Well, she said it was a kind judge on that day. But that must be a very rare judge out of a kind of total of the whatever hundreds or thousands, well, not hundreds, but thousands of county court judges in this country. So Politonby, who is supposed to be the fountain of all compassionate wisdom on the Guardian among the Guardian columnists, she is clueless as well. So where do you go for the actual fact and the evidence and the truth about housing criminality and housing crooks? You come to the Khoodeelaar campaign and watch Khoodeelaar television channel and then get the guidance from here and then do the necessary research, fact check, and so on. The pieces that the Guardian has been boasting about, because they are saying about the scoop. Apparently, Ben Brown of the BBC News Channel praised the Guardian's uh, what's his name? Abrat, isn't it? Let's check the name of this Guardian reporter. Aubrey. 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 His name is Aubrey Allegretti. So BBC News Channel fronter at that time in the afternoon, on Wednesday afternoon on the BBC News Channel, Ben Brown had about 8 or 9 kind of reporters, commentators about the. At that point, he was talking about the just breaking news item about Suella Braverman resigning. That is what Ben Brown gave Aubrey Allegretti the congratulations on. Thanks or congratulations on the scoop. By that he meant the scoop, alleged scoop by Aubrey Allegretti on The Guardian, breaking the story about Suella Braverman having left the Home Office. Now, not long after that, well, not long after the item by Allegretti appeared on the Guardian website during Wednesday, did the Sun catch up and they started saying that Suella Braverman had actually left, has been sacked or resigned the Home Office post. But if you look at the actual contents of Aubrey Allegretti and the other reporters and kind of Whitehall editor like the Financial Times says Whitehall editor, this little Sebastian Payne, you will find that they are shallow, they are not solid, and they keep going around, meandering around the kind of little pieces, little kind of themes that they create, but they are not really making substantial original points whatsoever. And for the substance, you come to read or research on the contents of the Khoodeelaar television channel, the Khoodeelaar campaign. Today is we are now already into Friday. This item has been going on for more than an hour. So we are into Friday, the 21st of October 2022. On Friday, the 22nd of October 2004, the Khoodeelaar campaign staged and held and organized the first ever campaign rally in the street, in the Greater X Street at 6 o'clock. And it was probably the first of Ramadan, or it was the month of Ramadan. And we held that opposite the council's building, Tower Hamlets Council's building, which was used as a surgery by the two local councillors. One was Abbasuddin Elias Halal, and the other was Lutfur Rahman, who is kind of protege at the time, 2004. So we shall be marking the anniversary of that particular rally in tomorrow's edition, and we shall be updating. We shall be updating duly. Let me just see what Aubrey Allegretti is. Yes, Aubrey Allegretti, political correspondent for The Guardian, also SPA journalism trustee, MHFA and LFC fan, ex Sky News, Huffington Post UK and The Times. So he joined the Twitter thing in November 2009. He has got 1,345 followers. No, he is following 1,345 followers accounts, and he is being followed by 28.2 thousand followers. Now, why do they have so many followers? Because they are kind of exploiting the Guardian, the website that features highly on the news searches. So we are now broadcasting at this minute 01:11 hours GMT, and the length of time we have been on air on the broadcasting this anyway is 1 hour 14 minutes 29 seconds by the time I finished talking about it. And it started at 23:55 GMT, or the starting time was or has been 23:55 hours GMT. Now, one of the things that I said about the Tower Hamlets community housing is that it's a criminal gang now. Said that when we campaigned When we campaigned in the 1970s for what we called, the campaigners called the campaign for a fourth channel, that was parallel to the time when the then government, it was the Wilson government, had appointed. Now, Wilson would have done that because Wilson was the one who actually founded the Open University. So, Wilson was very interested in broadcasting. Now, Wilson government appointed the Annan Committee on the Future of Broadcasting, which is the Gabriel Annan was a London University academic, was the vice chancellor of one of the. We shall check on that one. The Annan Committee was in process about the future of broadcasting in the UK, and especially exploring the various possibilities of having a fourth channel at public expense. I was one of the very small number of campaigners for a fourth channel. And the discussions that the campaign meetings had about the future of broadcasting, you would expect that from me. I disagreed with most of the others when I said that this is an overhyped claim in confidence about the future fourth channel. Even if it's set up, it will not deliver. This is what I said. I say it will not deliver because professional crooks will take over and they'll fuck up the actual purpose for demanding a fourth channel. And the reason why there was a demand for the fourth channel was because the existing two channels of BBC, BBC One and BBC Two, and the only other channel was the ITV, the so-called third channel. They were not accessible to ordinary people, and they're suppressing public opinion, people, activists' opinion, and critical comments, etc., etc. So it was felt that a fourth channel with a clear mandate, clear duty to let people have a say, that the ITV and the BBC two channels were not allowing people, was overdue. And I kept saying that it is overdue, but it will not happen. Now, when Channel 4 began broadcasting, I've done a number of broadcasts on Channel 4 since it became broadcast, but I have stopped doing that because of the corruption and the lies and the dishonesty. I broadcast various items on the slot, which is the 3-minute long slot broadcast after the main 7 o'clock news bulletin. And the latest one that is contextually significant is the one that I broadcast in January 1992. And I addressed the United Nations on the actual poverty and hunger in the world. And I condemned John Major for overly referring to nuclear proliferation because he was not genuinely against nuclear proliferation. John Major, like the doddering Joe Biden, in his comments against Pakistan recently, John Major was focusing on countries like Pakistan, not necessarily naming Pakistan, but his concern was similarly motivated that security members like the UK were safe to have their nuclear weapons, but countries like Pakistan were not safe because they were Muslim, etc., etc. So I shifted the whole focus of the John Major speech at the General Assembly before he gave the speech, and I broadcast internationally on Channel 4 News, the slot. And I said that the priority of the United Nations and the world community and of the Western countries should be to end hunger, destitution, and starvation and famine in Africa and Asia, in the original countries from where the main migrants head for the West. And what I said has been more than vindicated, more than actually proven right. I predicted that if the poverty and hunger and famine and starvation in the countries of origin are not handled and tackled, then there would be serious issues arising in the Western countries, Western European countries, which will be targeted by desperate people from these backgrounds in origin in the African and Asian countries. And there will be public dissension, public outrage, or the ordinary people would be outraged and would be against the migration tendency from large numbers of people coming from Africa and Asia. Now, this has been a factor in the Brexit as well. And this remains a factor. This has been the real factor in the row that Cruella Braverman had with Liz Truss. Curiously, Liz Truss doesn't mind the high numbers of migrants coming to the UK from India, whereas Cruella Braverman does. She not only does object to that, but she objects to other migrants coming from Africa and Asia as well. So Suella Braverman is not just particularly against Indians. She's against African Asian migrants coming to the UK from all backgrounds. So I had solved that problem. January 1992, January 2002 is 10 years. January 2012, 20 years. And January 2022, 30 years. Then January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. And this is 30 years and 9 months since I did that broadcast. Now, I have got absolutely every line, every word I said then has been vindicated and proven correct. Now, go back to the founding aims and campaigns and my predictions against Channel 4 itself. And what the Channel 4 criminals did in the series of programs they did, including the one that I have referred to earlier, this undercover boss, they actually lied about Township Council having to deal with or having serving people's in housing needs. The council has not been serving people in housing needs. Township Council has been causing housing shortage in Tower Hamlets. And this criminal who was in post as chief executive was a collaborator, colluder with Lutfi Rahman. And they lied. And this liar also appeared separately on a television program. And he supported the campaign for foisting an executive mayor. Now, when the executive mayor post was created already in October 2010, let's see where the actual date the Township Council got foisted, lumbered with these. Can you believe this? It's anniversary. This is the 21st of October 2022. So its exact anniversary, 12 years on this day. And it says the mayor of Tower Hamlets is the directly elected mayor of Tower Hamlets, London Borough Council in East London, England. The first election for this position occurred, it says on the entry, 21st of October 2010, taking on the executive function of the Borough Council. The position is different from the previous largely ceremonial annually appointed mayors of Tower Hamlets, who became known as the chair of council after the first election and are now known as the speaker of council. The second election was held on the 22nd of May 2014, the same day as the Tower Hamlets Council election, other United Kingdom local elections, and the European Parliament elections. But the election results were declared void by the election court. A by-election was held on the 11th of June 2015. Now it says, since it shows the picture of Lutfur Rahman and its caption reads, since is the incumbent Lutfur Rahman, incumbent mayor since 9th of May 2022. Fuck them. This election took place on the 5th of May 2022. Shits. And it says the formation was in the May 2010 referendum. So let's say on the 21st of October, and I'm talking about this on 12th anniversary, 21st of October, Lutfur Rahman was first elected mayor. And since he became elected, Channel 4 television broadcast several episodes. Let's go to check the actual episodes names and the dates. And the first episode, How to Get a Council House, is shown as dated 8th of January 2013. Now, that was more than a year before the second election of the so-called mayor in Tower Hamlets took place on the 22nd of May 2014. Now, that, even if that is the date, so that would be 3 years. That would be 3 years into Lutfur Rahman's tenure, incumbent mayor, at the expense of Tower Hamlets, because he became incumbent on the 21st of October 2010, and this was dated the 8th of January 2013. Now, this is one council and the other one is Manchester. But Tower Hamlets Council was the one that Channel 4 focused on, and it broadcast several episodes. And completely peddled serial lies against the people of Tower Hamlets, especially the people who are in need of housing, individuals and families, and were being denied housing by violating the legal obligations, the social obligations, and other obligations that the council was under. Now, the significant thing about this criminality by Channel 4 television and the complicity by Lutheraman fronted crooks in Tower Hamlets Council is this, that in the episodes that the channel broadcast, manufactured and broadcast under that headline, there was no input from any of the elected democratic councillors. And especially, there was no input from Lutfur Rahman on the record. And I have been saying it right from the beginning, right from the time that this happened. And not a single public commentator, reporter, journalist, investigator, campaigner, councillor, member of parliament has commented on the same thing as I have been doing. This is what I call the world exclusive content of this program. So think about that. How is it then that Lutfur Rahman is now boasting about Tower Hamlets Home, which is the Tower Hamlets Council's own in-house kind of thing, housing operation, which is staffed by people including a number of criminals who are complicit with the creation of housing crisis and estates based criminality and gangsterism across Tower Hamlets. And there is no comment. There is no comment from any of the councillors, no comment from the Labour Party, which is supposed to be in opposition currently at the time. It is understandable for opportunistic reasons that any of the so-called Aspire party councillors that owe their collusion duties to Lutfur Rahman, they may keep quiet. But who shut the mouths of the Labour Party councillors? Because despite the fact that they didn't win the controlling numbers at the election on the 5th of May, they still have more than enough numbers of elected councillors in place in the name of various wards in across Tower Hamlets. Who shut them up? Nobody shut them up. It is they who corruptly shut themselves up. Now, as for the role of the two current kind of members of parliament, currently sitting as members of parliament or in places members of parliament of the two parliamentary constituencies, one is Afsana Begum and the other is Rushnara Ali. Those two are liars. And those two are on parade. If Starmer succeeds in getting in, then Rushnara Ali will be given a token post because Ali is a mental slave. She was invented by the racists in the Labour Party and she got tutored in the so-called Young Foundation, crooks and racists and morons. And Rushnara Ali is complete plastic. She is a corrupt, ignorant, ingrate. She has no idea as to the fact that she is a member of parliament at all, as to how she became a member of parliament. She has no idea as to the campaign and the battles that I'm fighting. I started fighting and I'm still fighting. So that morons like her would have the option to become members of parliament. And she's a liar. Rushnara Ali is a liar. Now, those who support Rushnara Ali, the liar, and still claim that they are conscious of the obligations she has to the community, have to answer my question. Why is she lying and why are they supporting the liar? As for Afsana Begum sent me a number of lying emails on behalf of the liars, Ohid Ahmad and the liar Lutfur Rahman, while she was in employment of the Terrorist Council. In one of the emails, Afsana Begum said that the concerns that I had raised with Lutfur were being treated with the maximum importance at the highest level. What the fuck? That was a lie, pack of lies. So Afsana Begum, when she was employed into Armed Council, while Lutfur Rahman was imposed during the first period, or at least during the years before he was ousted by the election commissioner, Richard Morey, Mawrey, Richard Morey. Afsana Begum was obviously working either with Ohid Ahmad or in the so-called mayor's office. And she sent me several emails. And one of the emails she sent me used the word highest. Now, for her to say that the concerns, outstanding concerns that I had were being treated with the maximum importance at the highest level, was suggesting that Lutfur Rahman was doing the considering because he was the occupant in the post given the highest kind of authority within the framework of the bureaucracy of the elected mayor system. If she did mean Lutfur Rahman, then of course she didn't know that Lutfur Rahman would not know what highest consideration is. Because Lutfur Rahman cognitively challenged. This is again October. And in October 2010, let's say just a week before the election on the 21st of October 2010, there was this so-called hustings, so-called campaign meeting held at the Business Development Center, abbreviated to BDC, at number 7 to 15, Greater X Street, London E1 5NF. That meeting was organized by a group of individuals who I suspect were linked with the East London Mosque or the Islamic Forum Europe. Although they didn't say that, but looking at the appearance of those people, it was very clear that they were affiliated with the what used to be called the Islamic Forum Europe or the East London Mosque. And I stood, literally physically stood, with my camcorder right behind the candidates that were present. And the candidates that did turn up were the Lib Dem one, the Conservative one, and Lutfur Rahman, who was the one that was standing independent. The one that was not present was the one that the Labour Party had kind of fielded. Now, at that time, October 14th, I think, 2010, the person representing the London Evening No Standard was a man called David Cohen. I say it with a pronounced pronunciation. David Cohen, Cohen. Now, David Cohen, being part of Fleet Street, was of course an ally of the racists that were operating, covering the Tower Hamlets Borough area as well. And Cohen was carrying the myth, according to the kind of agenda, that Lutfur Rahman was behind the rumor against Abbas Uddin alias Helal of the Labour Party, that Abbas Uddin alias Helal had beaten up his former wife. Now, Abbasuddin Elias Halal denied that. Not only did he deny that, but he took his denial to the Queen's Bench Division in the High Court in London, which is the only place where claims of defamation actions are processed and filed and heard when they go through the particular steps. Now, David Cohen asked Lutfur Rahman, why haven't you, or you haven't, stopped your supporters from spreading the rumor, the untruth that Abbasuddin Elias Halal had beaten up his wife, former wife? Now remember, that is the question. It was not a question about anything else. It was a question David Cohen put at that open meeting held at the Business Development Center on the 14th of October 2010. And he aimed that question at Lutfur Rahman. And he wanted to know why Lutfur Rahman had not stopped Lutfur Rahman's supporters from spreading the rumor against Abbasuddin Elias Halal, to the effect that Abbasuddin Elias Halal had beaten up his former wife. Is there any problem in understanding that? There shouldn't be. So who misunderstood that question? Well, Lutfur Rahman, of course. Because instead of saying that he has no part in any rumors, etc., Lutfur Rahman replied by using words to the effect that he, Lutfur Rahman, had not beaten up his wife. Think about that. The question was not about Lutfur Rahman beating up his own wife. The question was about Lutfur Rahman not stopping his political supporters, so-called, whoever they were, from spreading the lie to the effect that Abbasuddin Elias Halal had beaten up Abbasuddin Elias's former wife. How could Abbasuddin Elias's former wife become converted to Lutfur Rahman's own wife? And so on. So as I have said with that evidence, Lutfur Rahman suffers from serious cognitive problems. He doesn't understand plain words and concepts, as he didn't do at that time on that occasion. So, why would Lutfur Rahman then be given the credit, which is what Afsana Begum was giving in her bogus or falsely scripted emails to me, by claiming that my concerns about the council's corruption, well, that is what she was referring to. My concerns about the Starmer's council's corruption, criminality, wrongdoing were being given the highest consideration at the highest level. Because Lutfur Rahman, if that is who she meant, was not capable of giving highest consideration to an ethical, moral, evidential issue. Now, this is the High Court, one of the High Court rulings in the case that Abbasuddin Elias Halal brought against a defendant called Shah Yusuf. Now, Shah Yusuf was sued by Halal Uddin Abbas. Well, it was Abbasuddin Elias Halal. That is the real name, but that in the court case ruling, it was Justice Tugendhat. Mr. Justice Tugendhat, Honorable Mr. Justice Tugendhat, and it is dated the 18th. This report, this version of the text is in the Royal Courts of Justice, 18th of March 2014. And it was about this publication by Shah Yusuf. And let's read the first paragraph. Justice Tugendhat is reported here as saying, this libel action was commenced by claim form issued on the 11th of October 2011. As set out in the particulars of claim, served on the 28th of November 2011. The claimant, Mr. Abbas, complains of words published in the issue of London Bangla dated the 15th to 21 October 2010. These were first an advertisement including the words "Stop Wife Beating Mayoral Candidate Helal Abbas," and second, an extract from that advertisement published in an article which appeared on the same page under the hearing. Well, it should not be called hearing, it should be heading. A right mayoral punch up. It is not necessary to set out the words complained of in full. The meaning which Mr. Abbas attributes to them and which is not in dispute for the purpose of the application before me is that he, that is Abbas, has a history of committing violent assaults upon women close to him, in particular upon his former wife. The defendant, Mr. Shah, was the editor of the newspaper. No defense has been served. On 12th of December 2012, Mr. Shah issued an application notice seeking orders under Civil Procedure Rules 31.17 for disclosure of documents against two persons who are not parties to the libel action, namely the Crown Prosecution Service and Saleha Ali. Miss Saleha Ali was formerly the wife of Mr. Abbas. Originally, there was a first defendant, London Bangla Limited, the publisher of London Bangla, but that company ceased trading on 31st of July 2011, and the claim was discontinued against it on 25th of October 2012. The application against the CPS has not been pursued. The documents of which Mr. Shah seeks disclosure from Ms. Ali are stated in the draft order to be her medical records. But Mr. Shah has made clear that he limits his application to records held by Saleha Ali's GP. Mr. Shah has no legal representations. Litigants in person commonly have great difficulty in conducting live elections, and that may be one reason why the procedural history of this case is as it is. At the time the words complained of were published, Mr. Abbas was a councillor in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets and for the ward Spitalfields in Bangla Town, and a member of the Labour Party. He was the Labour candidate for the office of mayor of Tower Hamlets in the election due to be held on the 19th of October 2010, 4 days after the issue of the newspaper containing the words complaint of. Now 19th of October here, and the Wikipedia entry says 21st of October. We shall check again the actual exact date on which it was held. As a result of the publication of the words which are complained of in this live election, Mr. Shah faced being charged with an offence under the Representation of the People Act 1983, Section 106, that reads so far as material. A person who, or any director of any body or association corporate which, before or during an election, the purpose of affecting the return of any candidate at the election, makes or publishes any false statement of fact in relation to the candidate's personal character or conduct shall be guilty of an illegal practice unless he can show that he had reasonable grounds for believing and did believe that statement to be true. For the purpose of that prosecution, Miss Ali made two statements in Form MG11, one on 13th of January 2011 and another on 12th of May 2011. She stated that she had been married to Mr. Abbas for 9 years until 1996, and there was no physical violence between herself and Mr. Abbas when they were married. On 28th of November 2011, Mr. Abbas served the particulars of claim as stated above. In addition to the other matters, he claims aggravated damages in paragraph 9. Mr. Abbas alleges that Mr. Shah knew or ought to have known that he was publishing information designed solely to injure Mr. Abbas' reputation prior to the mayoral election. Mr. Abbas has complained that Mr. Shah made no attempt to contact Mr. Abbas or his former wife prior to publication. Mr. Abbas pleads that he will ask the court to infer that this was because Mr. Shah suspected the allegations were untrue but did not want to take any steps which would confirm those suspicions. On the 31st of January 2012, judgment in default was entered against Mr. Shah in this live election, etc., etc. So it was not about Lutfur Rahman beating up his wife. It was the publication in London Bangla that Abbas had beaten up his former wife. And yet, Lutfur Rahman completely misinterpreted David Cohen's question. If that is the case, then how is it that Afsana Begum expected her email to me to be reliable, to be believed? I didn't believe it. I could not believe it, and I didn't have to believe it. Okay? So, what we shall be doing is continuing on that and other issues about the unreliability of Lutfur Rahman and his colleagues. And we shall be stopping this particular part at 01:58 hours GMT on the Friday, the 21st of October 2022. And this has been 2 hours, 1 minute and 35 seconds long.